Welcome, Therese. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm honestly a little bit nervous about us recording this, but it's so important and it's going to be fine. But I just wanted to express that I'm definitely meeting an edge here because this is something that we have been on the same page with since like early 2020. And this is one of the things that actually like united us together, which I'm so grateful for. But it's not something I really talk a lot about in like my work because there's not really much to say, really.
So before we get in deeper to the topic, just share with me, because I feel that I remember when we were talking about this behind the scenes, especially a lot years before, we both felt really nervous. We were like, oh my gosh, like, I don't feel safe. I don't know what's going to happen because there was a lot of backlash. But just out of curiosity, what brings up nerves for you now?
Yeah, I think it's that fear of judgment and fear of rejection. Like a client that I have who is watching this and all of a sudden gets upset with something I say and then they don't want to work with me anymore. And that kind of thing. And it's like, well, I mean, I have nothing but the utmost love and respect for anyone who's watching this or watching any of our work or working with me or you or whatever. And I have been so respectful and supportive of people's beliefs about everything through all of this. And that hasn't changed. It's just now I and we are coming forth to just be honest and share encouragement, and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally get it too. I mean, I've been in that place as well. Maybe it's different because it's on your channel and I'm kind of like, hey, I'm hanging out on Amber's channel. But I do share this to my channel too. I just I don't know. I feel really grounded this time. And I think it's just because things have really shifted. The tide has shifted. So what we're talking about today, and we are live on YouTube, so we might have to censor our words a little bit because YouTube still censors people for saying certain things. So we are talking about non-compliance, and in regards to a certain medical situation that we're all very familiar with in 2020. We saw it
with the C. Oh,
that's right. I know, like, oh, we need like a picture in the corner, just be like that thing, right?
That thing.
And we're specifically talking about the measures that were taken to prevent the spread of that thing, right? And again, we're talking like this just because YouTube will like shut you down if you say words it doesn't like. So we're talking about the measures that were taken. So my stance has always been that the virus itself existed, right? Like it existed. Because I know a lot of people who criticize people who push back the first time. We're like, you guys are in denial. You don't even believe anything's happening. And that's not my personal stance on it. My personal stance, though, was also looking at the survival rate, which was like, depending on your age bracket, 99.99999 something, right? I think for my age group, it was like 99.999%, 9998 or something. So that's really high, high, which automatically made me go, like, why are we freaking out over this? But, we've had a few years to process this and a lot has come out, since then. And what was shown to us was kind of what some of us felt in the beginning, that this was really a mechanism for control. And they were just using a type of virus as an excuse to do all of these very draconian measures against people for a plethora of reasons. There were multiple reasons. So it wasn't just one thing they were using it for, because they were trying to create this really big agenda shift, which we now know as the Great Reset, right? Like that's one of the big things that they were trying to use that for. And so both Amber and I, like partly how we met each other was that we were both in a place of non-compliance. We were like, there's only so far I can go with this. Do you want me to tell my story of like how I So my personal story was, I remember my husband talking about it, and he was like, oh, in China, all this stuff is happening. And he's like, it's going to come here. And I was like, shh. I was like, no, it's not. I'm not playing that game. We're not doing it here. Like, I was all about trying to use my own ability to manifest, to be like, this isn't happening. And so when it did start happening, my first emotional response to it was to get pissed off. I was pissed off that this was happening and that we were going to have to play this game. And then of course it went bananas, right? And nobody really knew, including myself, no one really knew what was going on. All I could use at that time was my intuition. And, I do this for a living. I use my intuition for a living. Just something from the very beginning made me go, something's rotten in the state of Denmark. I don't know what's off, but this is off.
Yeah.
And so everything that was required of us to do, I couldn't do it. There was so much resistance in me. And again, this was because intuitively I knew somebody was like pulling the wool over my eyes. I could feel that I was being manipulated. And yet I couldn't pinpoint what or why, but seeing that happen. And of course, then it got really emotional, right? Because the fear tactics were really pulled up, but my brain kept going, wait a minute, if we're in this medical emergency situation where things are so hazardous, you have to Clorox wipe your groceries down before you can bring them in your house. Why are the immunocompromised who live on the street? Why are homeless people who are heavily immunocompromised not dead on the streets? And I'm glad they weren't dead on the streets, but why weren't we seeing that? That's something you would see. And not only that, but why are we being told this is really toxic or contagious, right? And there's no proper medical waste bins. There was no medical waste disposal. Whereas in I worked for a plastic surgeon for years, and there was medical waste bins everywhere for everything. You use a paper gown that goes into, it doesn't just get thrown into a trash can, it gets thrown into medical waste. It gets disposed of properly because, again, they don't want to pass germs on. So here we are having people walking around masked up, but I'm finding masks on the ground. People are leaving them in their cars. They're wearing it over and over. There's no medical waste disposal. And it was just like, wait a second, why are you so comfortable discarding this and leaving it on the ground? But you're so terrified. I mean, it didn't make sense, right? Nothing was adding up. And so, the longer it went, and of course, the longer it went on, the less willing I was able to put up with it. And of course, that was not the popular stance at the time. And it wasn't popular, in my own little family. Yes, that's how we all felt, but it wasn't an accepted belief around me. In fact, everybody else was very much like, let's just be safe, let's be on board. And because of that, I didn't have this antagonistic feeling towards people who were agreeing. I really felt we weren't seeing the same thing, and thankfully I have strong relationships, and I approached everything with respect. So it wasn't me like telling you other people, hey, you're an idiot for doing this. That's not how I felt at all. How I felt is like, wow, we are not seeing the same things. And I didn't know, I would do my best to communicate from my perspective what I was seeing, but many times there was pushback, and it was like, no, you've got this wrong, and you're on the wrong side of history here. So it was one of those situations where I turned a lot to meditation and prayer to deal with it. Because what I found was, more than a virus that was infecting people, it was a mindset that had really infected people. And I was very lucky and blessed that I had a lot of love around me, but there were some like more distant family members who were like, people who didn't comply in any of the ways were disgusting people. And they were just freely saying it like, that's just a fact.
Yeah.
And
people were very vocal.
Yep. And I remember hearing that and just thinking, wow, you don't even know that the person in the room who's listening to you're talking about in this negative way. And it was astonishing to me how willingly people would throw others that they love under the bus
Yeah.
because of fear.
Yeah, exactly. Because of fear of false evidence appearing real.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, the thing is, what I ended up doing and what I would encourage people to do now, it works beautifully, is that when I get into a situation where I couldn't agree with someone or how they handled it, rather than insisting that they see it my way, because I know like you're not going to win that, right? You're not going to win an argument where someone is seeing something. You almost entrench them in their position when you are trying to argue them out of it. So that was never my approach. My approach was instead, even though from my human perspective, I don't understand why you're making this choice, or I don't understand how you're seeing this, I choose to respect and trust the soul inside, that you're on a path that you're supposed to be on, even if I can't understand it. And coming from that place allowed me to keep a lot of peace in my life during a very turbulent time where I was the odd man out. You know what I mean? I was not on the favorite side. I was definitely on the side of like the black sheep, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It
Yeah.
definitely was a very interesting time. And it was the same here. Like, we started seeing things overseas and then it landed here. And then all of a sudden the next thing you know, we're going into this lockdown, and hubby and I from the beginning were just like, something doesn't feel right about this. And you can't ignore that gut feeling. You can't ignore that intuition. It doesn't lie, and it was forged out of love to help you versus the mind to be deceived. And so, the first X months, like there wasn't really anything other than lockdown, and then things opened up for summer, and then we went into the fall, and that's where the first round of mandates came in for the face coverings, the masks, whatever you want to call them. And we just looked at each other and said, this doesn't feel right. We're not going to do it. We don't see the reason why. We had started waking up and learning about all kinds of things. So by that point, it's like, okay, it's going against our soul's will, and there's no way we can do it. And so we were some of the only people that would go into places and not wear them and get the groceries or drop something at the post office or whatever it was. And the expressions, the way people would look at us, the anger in their eyes, thinking that we're doing something really wrong, that we're being irresponsible, that we're the very reason why this is existing and getting worse. Like we're cesspools when we're very healthy people. We didn't get sick once through the whole thing, knock on wood, right? And like we know how to support our immune systems, but again, the judgment out of fear and the being called a grandma killer. I'm like, I have no intent for any ill will upon anybody. I'm a very loving, caring person. I help people heal, right? But the projection, people commenting on posts, or if I was encouraging like a company that wasn't standing or wasn't complying or going out in public. And, in the beginning, it was very nerve-wracking. I'd get ready to go into a place. I'm like, this is nerve-wracking. I'm like, I don't even want to go out and do anything because I shouldn't have to feel nervous going to run an errand, to go and buy a Christmas present, to go and buy a plant or whatever I needed, to go to the pharmacy and pick up my thyroid stuff. Like you take for granted, like being able to so freely go places until something like that happens. And then you're like, okay, like I need to put on my armor of God and prepare to potentially be addressed or not. And maybe no one says anything, but I've got to prepare for like every scenario, right? Because I'm not going to comply. Like this is a no for me. And, the first couple times it was very nerve-wracking, but then it built confidence and like, wow, like nobody said anything. Like I just went in and did my thing. And then I had a circumstance where my sister-in-law and we went to get propane, and we went into pay, and he refused to serve me because we weren't wearing them. And I stood there and I stood my ground and I said, this is against the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. You cannot refuse me service, and you cannot force me to wear one of those. This is against human rights and it is illegal. Right. And so one of the things that really helped to empower me with not complying and just standing up for what felt right for me was knowing my rights, and knowing my charter. And I know in the States is the Constitution, but really being able to refer to that and have seen other documentation and paperwork that was talking about how it is actually illegal to force people to wear masks and
Yes, it
cover their
is.
faces. Is a war crime, kind of stuff. Like it is not, you know what I mean? So
Right.
I just stood my ground, and it was probably about 5 or 6 minutes before he finally let me pay for it and leave. And there was people behind me watching me. And I'm just like, I don't care what anyone thinks. Like, this is for me, and this is wrong. And I'm not going to back down.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to argue with anyone. I'm like, honestly, like, you're making this a big issue, and it doesn't have to be. If you would just let me pay, I'd already be gone. So there
Yeah.
was this interesting dynamic with the people that you could witness were trying to go into a bit of a power, right? Like, oh, I've got this power, like,
yes.
I cannot serve you, not knowing, like, you're literally like committing a crime
Yeah.
right now if you decide to not serve me. And all of that stuff is just so interesting, that the power grab that some people working at these places were trying to take. But the more we went into it, I just would go in with a huge smile on my face. I'm like, I'm just going to smile at everybody. I'm going to say hello. I'm going to be extra loving and kind to whomever I interact with, because I'm here to spread love and light. And who knows, maybe I will inspire someone who is terrified and only doing this because most other people are, and they're too nervous to do it themselves. And there's a few times where I went into places and then people took theirs off too, and they're just like, you know, you look at each other and you're just like, you got this, you know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
and that was, you know, an experience of faith and, you know, building confidence and just doing what felt right for you. And I never poo-pooed anyone who decided they wanted to wear one. The hardest part was probably when they brought in the passports for the thing in the arm, because, right, most of the gyms, restaurants, like any place you wanted to go for any kind of entertainment or enjoyment, where we'd like to go out on dates and all that kind of stuff, all of a sudden couldn't go. And then we couldn't fly if you didn't get the thing. Not even in our own country could we fly, take a train, right? Hubby didn't see his family for 3 years because of that. And that was some emotion to process through, because when you know your charter of rights and you know that they've literally stripped it all away for a control grab, and a force and a way to go, well, if you want this, you have to do this. I never thought it would get to that point. And so it was all a very big growth experience. And we learned a lot about ourselves and about the system, and it woke a lot of people up to, right? And then the Freedom Convoy happened, and it brought this country together when that occurred, because people were like, enough is enough. We don't want to be divided. We don't want passports. We know our rights.
Right.
And so now, right, here we are in, you know, going almost into fall 2023, and there's some chatter, well, a lot of chatter of, oh, all of a sudden it's back. We're coming back, right?
Right. So, and we have a lot more knowledge now, and I'm just going to talk about a few things. We don't have the slides today. And I might have some of the details slightly off. So, you know, if you have that detail, put it in the comments for us. But we know things like, one, the PCR test, the person who invented that test said it was never made for COVID. It never picked up the virus, right? So with that, first, it wasn't made for it. Two, the cycle count was driven up to like 45, 49 cycles initially, which means that what that test was meant to do was pick up dead RNA, right? And if you have to cycle it that high, you're going to pick it up. You're going to pick up something because that's a lot of cycles. So by doing that, you know, automatically made it look like everyone was testing positive. When they lowered the cycle count, well, look at that. Like, not as many people test positive because not as many people had, you know, the dead RNA from like an infection or, you know, or from a cold that they had or something else that was going on. So we knew that they were falsifying the numbers, you know, and then we knew that they were denying certain medication, which, by the way, they were not allowed to do. We just found that out. That was a case that was just passed, that the FDA never had the right to deny doctors to prescribe other medications like ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. they were blocking doctors from doing this, but they weren't allowed to do that. And that's just come out. So
Yeah.
thankfully this time doctors will not have that threat over their head.
Yeah. Which I can't imagine. Like, my heart goes out to that whole community that felt so pressured and threatened, and to everybody who was impacted in any way by this in a negative way.
Which is all of us.
Everybody was in some
us.
way. And something interesting that I want to share was when we were, I think it was spring of 2021, and I was still doing media segments because I did like CTV, global news pretty much every month, and I would share health, right? Like natural health tips, recommendations. And we went to all online, and I was starting to feel more and more uncomfortable doing these segments because I'm going like, my beliefs and what's going on, and all of the propaganda and the fear that they're pushing is starting to feel so misaligned. And then one day I actually I pitched the producer for a segment, and he actually said to me, and I literally still have the email. He said, yeah, we've been advised to ban all natural health segments moving forward. So if you want more proof that they didn't want natural health being shared on their shows, I mean, I'm living proof of it. I got barred from, going to do these segments. And honestly, I wouldn't have probably stuck with it much longer anyway, because it just felt so out of alignment. But that email, I was just like, here's more proof, right? And it's just so interesting because I personally know a lot of the hosts and anchors, and they're all pushing all this stuff. And I just can't imagine the amount of programming that you receive. And of course you have to follow the narrative. And for those that left that didn't want to, they were belittled and shunned and like verbally, almost abused for not wanting to follow along with the narratives. And so I just wanted to share that because I used to do all the media locally here. And then that obviously happened. And of course,
sad.
Yeah. And we find our new ways and paths. But yeah, it's, a lot of people recognize me and they're like, oh, how come you're not doing this? How come we haven't seen you lately? And I don't be like, well, because I got banned. Because, but what's also interesting on natural immunity is when it first happened in the first while, like I had colleagues who are herbalists and own superfood stores and all kinds of things, try to do YouTube videos, Instagram videos talking about natural immunity and ways you could support your system. And they got taken down so fast. They got censored so fast. Yeah.
No, I mean, it was nuts. And then of course, what would happen is like people would start to find each other. I mean, that was the beauty of what happened is you could really find the people that were in alignment with you, no matter which way you were looking at this thing. You could find people that were, seeing it from your perspective or understanding your perspective, which was the thing I think that saved a lot of people. Because I too, I wouldn't wear the mask, and I have a medical reason why I don't want to wear the mask. And in our country, we have HIPAA laws that protect us from that. We do not have to disclose the reason. It's, it's private medical reasons. And I remember getting shamed at Michael's, and my husband, just to kind of minimize it and like take the edge off, he would put a mask on when we went shopping together. So it was like, hey, like obviously something's different here. He's complying, right? So like, leave us alone. And they literally would not let me shop in the store, even though I'd shopped in there several times. But like you said, the power trip, and it was definitely a power trip, right? That was happening. And I had to stand my ground too. And I'm not a confrontational person. It's like, but the anxiety that went along with that, because what was really interesting, it was like, I tried a couple times to be like, let's see if I can just do it just so I can go and get things done. And what happened to me was, not only was I having a reaction, I was having an emotional reaction from being so out of alignment with myself. Like it was so out of integrity for me to do this, knowing that it was a manipulation. Like we've known for a while, because there were so many studies done, even though they weren't brought out to the public in general, the studies were there about masking. For example, the virus itself is about like 1 to 3 microns in size. And then you've got water vapor, which they told us it was riding on water vapor, which was about 60 microns in size. And then the opening of an N95 mask, the little holes that are in it, the weave, right, is 80% is an 80 micron opening, which means water vapor would pass right through it. I don't know if you remember, I think it was in Canada, they were doing some kind of Olympic dancing or something. Do you remember that when the dancers, they were all masked and they were dancing, and you'd see the water vapor come out of their mouth because they were outside and it was cold. And you could see it just leave. And it's like, right there was the proof, like it's not stopping that kind of, it doesn't stop that kind of expression. It stops droplets, right? It stops sweat or spit and things like that, but it wasn't stopping that material. So my point is like all of this was out there, and I was like, okay, like this is what I thought, this is what I'm feeling. And yet every time I try to just put up with it just so I could be a part of society, I'd feel sick to my stomach. It was like that kind of feeling where it's like, this isn't worth it. I would rather be harassed for not doing it than try to blend in and do this, because it was so against what I knew to be true. And that caused a lot of anxiety and stress. I remember a lot of private conversations between you and I where we would just have to vent and talk about how pissed off we were, not about the experience, but what we'd have to go through to get to the hairdresser or grocery store or whatever. And all that, like, you'd get worked up. You felt really alone, and it was designed to shame. Right. The whole thing was designed to shame, to belittle, to make you feel like the bad person, to make you feel like you're the problem. And then you'd get people who, were at the extreme end of this, who were like, yeah, you are the problem. You don't deserve to live. Death threats. And so the reason we bring all this up and share it with you is because I sense, and maybe you watching this, maybe you also didn't comply the first time, or maybe you're like, no, I went through that the first time and did what you said. I'm not doing it again. And the reason we wanted to bring this up at all was to kind of give comfort to those who aren't going to comply, who are like, I'm done. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. We just wanted to let you know that there have been people that there have been people who've already been through this, but we've got your back. We do. And there's a safety in numbers for sure, but just know that, those of us who didn't comply, we were never against people going through this. And I've never looked at someone and been like, how dare you comply? How dare you go through that? I understood that the fear was real. And I understood that the confusion and like, not just, better safe than sorry mentality. I understood that. But I want you to know that if you are over it and this time you're done, that I want you to know that we've got your back, and I will not be complying again.
No, we're sitting this one out again.
Right.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, because I just feel like if we were in that scenario, and we did find each other, like I said, eventually we all found each other, but in the beginning, it was a scary choice to make. And I just imagine that maybe for someone who's considering just dropping this whole thing and calling it, like, I'm good, I'm done, I'm not doing it. If it's your first time, maybe you feel scared. Maybe you are unsure that it's a safe path to go down. And I sure know that in the beginning, I would have loved to have someone tell me that it was okay, and that there are people out there who would have my back. We saw each other in the end. We found each other. And it was very much reassuring to know, that there are other people out there.
And you might be thinking, well, sometimes it just feels easier to do what everyone else is doing, and it just feels easier to wear it because the majority of the people were, and I didn't want to be outcast or looked at and all that. And it's like, I thought that I'm like, well, maybe I should just do it because it's easier and then I won't have to worry about blah, blah, blah. But then I was just like, I can't because that's not who I am. And I think to like console you and comfort you with that, it's usually better to go against what the majority are doing when it comes to, these kinds of, in my opinion, like I was like, I'm the black sheep and that's okay. I'm okay with that. I accept that. I have to do what feels right for me. And again, not being judgmental of the other people doing the opposite. Like I just more so feel love and compassion. Like I wish they didn't feel the fear that they did, or I wish they didn't have the confusion, but everyone's going through the experience that they're meant to go through, right? The soul journey,
Yep.
we're all going through the one that we signed up for, and it's going to look a little bit different for everybody. But I think there is a strength in numbers. And so if this is your first time not complying and mandates come back for your area, like maybe you want to connect with a few friends that that are not the first time, you want to go somewhere together so you can see how easy it gets to be, and that you get to do it together and you get to cheer each other on, and then it'll make it feel more comfortable for you that for the next time. Or the other thing you could do, because I did this a couple times when this first started, I called the place first and I said, hey, like, are you letting people in if they don't want to wear a mask? Like, or are you not going to let me in? Because I didn't even want to deal with
Right.
door. And so I call a couple places first and they're like, yeah, no, it's not an issue. We're not going to discriminate against you. You're welcome in. And that was helpful in the beginning while I was still a little like, I don't know, right? And then it just got to the point where I'm like, I don't care. I'm going here. They're either going to kick me out or let me in. And that's going to be that. I know my hubby actually got kicked out of a couple places and they're like, you can't be in here. What do you want? Like, we'll bring the debit machine to you in your vehicle. And then obviously he just stopped going to those places and supporting them. But we also, just have to trust that everything's okay and we're okay. And it's not as big of a deal as your mind creates it to be. Right.
Yeah. And I hopefully this time people will be like, I saw it. I saw all of it. I saw the people who didn't comply and that they're safe and fine and alive. And so therefore I don't want to, but you know what I want to say to everyone is follow what feels in integrity and alignment with you. So maybe this conversation is just like going against your integrity.
Yeah.
That's fine. Like do what you feel is right in your soul.
Yeah.
Do that, because at the end of the day, you want to be able to sleep. You want to be able to go to sleep knowing that you did what you felt was authentically right for you. Yeah. And that might look very different than what we choose. But the message stands that, just know that the path has been forged. Like the people, there were those of us who took the slings and arrows so that the pathway could stay open, and that path will stay open. No, nothing's going to, if people didn't comply the first time, there's no way in hell they're going to comply this time, not because we have so much knowledge and we understand what's going on. And like I said, there is a lot of information out there that counters the original narrative that we were shown. And so it's easier this time for sure. But I wanted to do some cards, and I want to find out if this is even going to fly. Because you know what, honestly, it feels like it's not going to fly. No. I just don't think people are going to go for it.
I don't think so either. People are over it now. People are done.
Yeah. So let's ask the team really quick if there's going to be, another set of lockdowns. Because I think they'll try it, but I don't think people are going to do it. And I think that's going to be amazing, because that's all the thing that's amazing is that if the people don't do it, it doesn't happen. No. So we saw what happened when we all acquiesce. Now what happens when we all say no, or a majority says no? So let's see. All right. Okay. So waiting for this one. It's not going to go through. Yeah. So we got the 5 of Swords here, and this card is called defeat. And it's like they're going to hurt you, all they've got. So swords represents words and writing, right? So the mind.
Yeah.
So they're going to hurl shit at us constantly. There's going to be this, this wouldn't be happening if all of you just did what you were told the first time. So there's still going to be this, like, what they want really is, again, to keep people pitted against each other. Yeah. There's a little too much, the anger and animosity and the tension that was caused the first time was very beneficial to their own narrative and what they're trying to do. And so part of this is to see if they can stir the hornet's nest up, like stir it up again. Will you guys go at each other? And I don't think they're going to get that from us, because again, even if you have anger that someone complied, I don't think that anger is really directed at those people. It's directed at the fact that we were put in this test. Yeah. Right. And that we were pitted against each other. And I'd hope to think that there are people who are on the other side who see it differently, who also sort of recognize that it's not the people who didn't comply that are the problem, but rather we were put in a scenario that would really, like, put the screws to us. And it showed people for who they are, whether or not, what the people who weren't complying, we had lots of questions that weren't getting answered. Yeah. That's why we didn't comply. It wasn't because, we don't want to be safe. It was quite the opposite. It was like, why does that make me safe versus this? Yeah. And why can't you show me data? And why can't I ask questions? Yeah. And why can't I choose my own healing, modality? Yes. And so that's really what was going on. So no, there's like it's a bag of hot air is what I get. Yeah. Figured. Did you have another question? So why is it important for, oh my gosh, I don't know how to ask this. I'll just tell you what's coming up. Okay. United we stand, divided we fall. Humanity's better as a species united. Yes, we're going to have different beliefs. Yes, we're going to have different views. Yes, we're all going to do things in a different way. That's totally okay. What we need to learn is how to not judge each other for our choices, and also be at peace when someone doesn't want to do the same thing or think the same thing that we do. So is there any guidance that the cards or the team has around, like, supporting us in that moving forward? Because there's going to be other things that come up. Oh, sure. Yeah. So here's one of the things that they've been talking to me about a lot is that, to be together, to cooperate, we don't have to actually hold the same belief system. We don't. So you can have your view of it. I can have my view of it, and we can cooperate if we have that mutual respect. And again, what it requires is a surrender for the need to be right. I don't need you to see it my way. Yeah. And ideally, you don't need to see it my way. We need to be focused on a goal. And right now, the goal I would say that we could focus on is eradicating these people who are doing this to us. And there is a small majority, I call them the dark timeline group. Yeah. There's different names for them. It's the same group, right? Whatever name you're using, but ultimately, standing up to them and saying, no more, we're done. We're tired of you dividing us by gender, by age, by demographics, like race or our economic statuses, our religious beliefs, our health, the way we approach health. Like, we're done with doing that. I don't know that at any point in time we ever had a homogenous society where everyone thought the same. That's not even how we're designed to come here. We are meant to represent different aspects of source or God, whatever you want to call it. We are meant to be different, but the same. Yeah. Right? We're different, but equal. Exactly. Is what we are. And we were never going to homogenize. Instead, what we were doing was we were trying to show each other by living an example, all that source is. Yeah. Look at, you could be intensely analytical and have that life and express yourself in that way. You could be, flowery and flowing and free and one with nature. And there's so many different combinations in between. And there are different ways to approach it. And instead of trying to crush that individuality and difference in others, we're meant to be like, wow, look at all the ways we can express. And what does each aspect hold? Because each one is a value.
Yeah.
Right. And so when we actually start to see it from that, it's like, I don't have to adopt it. I don't have to believe it to understand you and to recognize you bring something to the table. And those who are really good leaders, or those who are really good at creating organizations, they actually thrive on having different perspectives with them. Those are the most successful combinations of working environments, is when you have multiple perspectives, because you're guaranteed to see it from at least that many different points of view and come to some kind of consensus, right? Where we're not saying this is the way forward. What we're really saying is like, all of these ways together create this. And so that's what I get. And let's ask, I'll see if I can get some clarity on that before we go, because I know we're running out of time, but let's ask the team. Is there anything else they would add to that statement? How do we work together? There we go. So the thing that they talk about is, so here's the Queen of Wands in the reverse position, and she represents, when she's in this position, insecurity. She's an insecure person. She is very judgmental of others. And this is what keeps us separated from each other. Ultimately, you're not okay with being different. You're not okay with standing out. And to go back to our initial conversation, it was hard to not comply. You were different by doing that. You were setting yourself apart and making it was almost like without the mask on, there's a spotlight on you. It was like, there's one, there's another one. Right. And it did bring out insecurity. But the more that you realize, like, again, integrity, like, I just want to be in integrity with myself. I want to be able to go to sleep at night and be in peace, knowing that I'm, whether I'm right or wrong, I'm following the internal guidance. I'm following the nudge of my soul, which says, don't, in my case, right? In your case, it was don't. So in order for us to help, we really need, and again, my team really emphasizes during this, do not try to fix or change anyone else. That's a task that you will fail at, and you will continue to be in pain and suffer because you can't.
No.
So instead, focus on what creates the insecurity in you. Why isn't it okay for you to be different? If you feel that way, if you feel that some part of you is unacceptable, deal with that part, love that part, find someone like Amber or myself or somebody else out there that you resonate with, who can help guide you back to falling in love with all parts of yourself, so that you can find that internal grounding and confidence that you need, because that will affect the whole. That will change. Like, then the more okay you are with yourself, the easier it is to be okay with others.
100%. I agree. Compassion, compassion, compassion. Gentle, gentle, gentle. And just recognizing that the insecurity, that they fostered that because they knew it would work, and it does. It's effective, but it doesn't serve. If you think about the fear that people had, it was like, you're not wearing that, and that could make me sick. That's an insecure thought right there. But somehow what you do has power over me. We do that a lot, though. We give our power away to others and think that what they do does have power over us.
Absolutely.
So it's about us taking our power back and learning to be more sovereign, confident, and trusting of ourselves, our intuition, and our guidance.
That's right. So my team always says, if you want to see unity in the world, you have to unify within yourself. You have to become the unified field, which means those aspects of yourself that you still reject or feel ashamed of, or guilt, or whatever it is, that's the part that needs love right now. That's the part you need to focus in on. Because once you do, and you start creating that unity energy within yourself, it'll naturally radiate out of you.
100%. And I wouldn't regret a minute of it.
So just know, we've got your back.
Yes.
If you're like, I'm done with this and I'm not going there, high five, neither will I.
Yeah, same. We'll
And
see you out smiling.
that's right. And if you still feel like it's better to be cautious than, and follow along, then, I'm sending you love and I wish for you to feel safe. I truly do.
Exactly. Always. Well, where can everyone find you if they want to reach out and learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can always go to blythestarlight.com. All my information is in the description below. And you can check out my YouTube channel, Blythe Starlight, where I do karma card readings. I'm about to do this week's. And the team is always giving us guidance and advice on, how to help ourselves move forward on this path of ascension and growth, because our destiny is to be a unified group, but it doesn't mean we're the same. It just means that we truly appreciate each other.
Yes, exactly. You have to go check out Karma Cards, everybody. It's so good. I love it. And if you want help supporting your health, your immunity, your hormone health, you want to help with healing your relationship with food, you can click below to check out the podcast, book a consultation, whatever you feel called to do. There's a lot we can do to help you build more confidence in your health and your well-being, so that you feel more in your power. So thank you for joining us for another episode. If you have any ideas for further topics, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Otherwise, sending so much love, and we'll see you all again next week. Take care.
Bye.